Hi, automotive enthusiasts. Welcome to Auto Archive, where we dive deep into the machines that define the road, the culture, and the experience of driving. Today, we're taking on a true heavyweight in the touring motorcycle world, the 2019 Harley-Davidson Road Glide Special. This bike isn't just a vehicle. It's a statement about endurance, design, and the way America approaches long-distance riding. What makes this model so compelling isn't simply that it carries the Harley-Davidson badge. It's that it represents a moment where tradition, modern engineering, and rider expectation collided to create something unforgettable. Think about what it means to sit on a motorcycle that weighs nearly 900 pounds, carries a Milwaukee 8 114 engine under its skin, and is built to cover hundreds of miles in a single push without losing comfort or control. It's more than a machine. It's an answer to the question of how far you can go when design and desire work together. In this story, we're not just looking at horsepower figures and accessory lists. We're asking, how does a bike with such mass still feel alive in your hands? How does it carry the legacy of Harley into a new era? And what kind of rider does it call to? We'll unravel the tale across 3 dimensions that intertwine like a long ride on twisting highways. First, we'll journey through its origins, design choices, and the cultural atmosphere that gave rise to the 2019 Road Glide Special. Then we'll lean into how those choices translated onto real roads, examining what it feels like to ride, what challenges and triumphs the machine faced, and how riders and critics responded in equal measure. Finally, we'll expand to the wider impact, what this model meant for Harley's future, how it altered expectations for touring motorcycles, and why it remains a reference point for those who chase horizons today. By the end, you'll have more than just an overview of a bike. You'll have a deeper sense of how it became part of a living tradition and why it continues to resonate with riders who demand both power and poise. So settle in, picture yourself on the open road with the horizon pulling you forward, and let's uncover the story of a touring beast that dared to define a new balance between muscle and endurance. This is going to be a ride worth taking. The Road Glide Special of 2019 didn't appear out of thin air. It emerged from Harley-Davidson's recognition that the long-haul touring market was shifting beneath their feet, with riders demanding comfort, stability, and modern amenities without sacrificing the iconic soul that made a Harley instantly recognizable. Riders in the US and beyond were traveling further, logging thousands of miles on highways that demanded not just raw power, but also sustained comfort. Harley needed a machine that didn't simply echo the past, but proved it could evolve. The Road Glide Special was their answer, and with it came a host of stories about design, risk, and what happens when a company famous for tradition chooses to innovate. Micro story. A design team inside Harley faced the tension of keeping the shark nose fairing, a bold and polarizing choice. Some executives argued for something sleeker, more in line with Japanese touring bikes, but engineers fought to keep the wide fairing fixed to the frame because it gave stability at highway speeds. That decision wasn't just about looks, it was about physics. A fixed fairing removes strain from the handlebars, making the bike more manageable over hundreds of miles. What started as a styling debate became a decision that shaped the entire riding experience of the 2019 Road Glide Special. Context digest. The touring class had grown fiercely competitive by the late 2010s. Honda's Goldwing had already reinvented itself with lighter weight and advanced tech. Indian Motorcycles had revived its heritage lineup with formidable V-twin cruisers. Harley couldn't just release another big bike with chrome. It needed a model that could prove Harley-Davidson still owned the open road. The Road Glide Special would become the spearhead for that claim. Micro story. Riders often tell of the first time they settled into the saddle of the 2019 Special. The wide stance, the deep rumble of the Milwaukee 8 114, and the way the bike settled into a straight line at speed created a sensation of control wrapped in muscle. One rider described feeling like the road bent toward them, not the other way around. This wasn't marketing fluff. It was the product of hours spent refining suspension, braking, and ergonomic layout. Harley built a heavyweight that could cruise without fatigue. Reflection bridge. Yet building a machine that felt both massive and manageable wasn't only an engineering feat. It was a cultural gamble. The Road Glide Special had to convince skeptics that Harley could adapt without losing its essence. Micro story. Take the paint and trim. The Special was offered in blacked-out finishes instead of the usual chrome-heavy style. To purists, this looked like betrayal. To younger riders, it felt bold and fresh. Harley was attempting to court a generation that had grown up with matte finishes, darker aesthetics and minimal ornamentation. The decision told a story. Harley wasn't afraid to speak a new design language, even if it meant alienating some of its most loyal fans. That friction defined much of the conversation around this model. Context digest. Touring motorcycles are judged not only on their look, but on what they offer across long distances. By 2019, riders expected not just saddlebags but infotainment systems, navigation, Bluetooth, and rider aids like linked braking systems. Harley had traditionally resisted layering on technology too quickly, preferring the mechanical purity of engine and steel. But with the Road Glide Special, they leaned into modern tech, proving they could still honor tradition while stepping into the digital age. Microstory. At Harley dealerships across the US, the Road Glide Special became the bike that sparked the longest test rides. Shoppers who thought they wanted a street glide or an ultra found themselves circling back to the Road Glide. Many cited how the fairing eliminated fatigue on windy days or how the linked brakes gave confidence when riding two up with a passenger. These weren't casual observations, they were real-world validations that Harley's gamble was paying off. Reflection bridge. But a motorcycle isn't just what the engineers build, it's what the riders experience on the road day after day. And once the Special hit highways, mountains, and small towns, its reputation began to crystallize in new ways. Context digest. The engine at the heart of this bike, the Milwaukee 8114, had been introduced only a couple of years earlier, and it was already earning a reputation for smoother power delivery and reduced vibration compared to older Harley big twins. The 2019 Road Glide Special leveraged this engine to become both faster off the line and more composed at cruising speeds. What might have felt like a mechanical detail became a defining part of the story, because in the touring world, comfort and control are inseparable from raw torque. Microstory. Consider the way the bike performed in real touring conditions. On routes like the Pacific Coast Highway or the Blue Ridge Parkway, riders found the Special could handle both tight curves and long straightaways without compromise. It wasn't nimble in the way a sport bike is, but its predictability gave a sense of trust. One rider recounted pushing through 3 states in a single day and arriving without the exhaustion normally tied to heavyweight bikes. That kind of performance reshaped the expectations for what a Harley could do on extended journeys. The stakes grew higher as reviews, rider stories, and dealership feedback converged. Harley had not only built a new touring model, it had built a benchmark that would set expectations for years. And yet, with every success came the question of how the Road Glide Special fit into Harley's evolving identity, which takes us deeper into the next part of its story. Once the Road Glide Special rolled beyond showrooms and test rides, the conversation shifted from design choices to lived experience. Riders who had dismissed Harleys as heavy, old-fashioned machines were forced to reckon with a touring bike that blended brute force with surprising finesse. On cross-country journeys in bustling city streets and on winding back roads, the 2019 model demonstrated what Harley could achieve when it committed to evolution. This wasn't just about whether it rode well, it was about whether it could redefine what a Harley touring motorcycle meant to its audience. Microstory. Imagine a group of riders heading out from Chicago on a summer dawn, bound for the Badlands. Among them, one rider is on a brand new 2019 Road Glide Special. Over the first few hours, the others notice how he's not fighting crosswinds the way they are, thanks to that fixed fairing. By the time they reach South Dakota, he's fresher, more alert, and able to keep pushing forward. For the rider, it's not simply convenience. It's proof that the design made endurance possible in ways the group hadn't expected. Context digest. Touring riders measure value in hours, not minutes. A motorcycle that can shave off fatigue or keep the rider sharper for longer is worth more than one that delivers a quick thrill. Harley knew this, and the Special was built to excel not at 10-mile blasts, but at 500-mile stretches. That philosophy separated it from smaller cruisers and aligned it directly against the touring icons of the era. Microstory. Another rider described climbing through the Rockies on a Special, noting how the bike held its line in sweeping mountain turns. Despite the weight, it responded predictably and didn't wander across lanes. The torque-rich engine delivered steady pulls up steep grades without strain. For riders used to muscle cars or big trucks, it felt familiar yet liberating. It was as though Harley had transplanted the stability of a highway cruiser into a frame that still let you lean into curves with confidence. Reflection bridge. In moments like these, the Road Glide Special transcended specs and numbers, becoming an extension of the rider's intent rather than just a machine beneath them. Micro story. At motorcycle rallies across America, the 2019 Special became a quiet star. At Sturgis, Daytona, and smaller regional meets, riders parked their bikes side by side. The blacked-out Special drew attention not for gaudy chrome, but for its restrained menace. Owners spoke of its practicality, its comfort, and its ability to eat miles without complaint. Younger riders gravitated to it, seeing in its darkened trim an aesthetic that matched their tastes, while older Harley loyalists debated whether this direction was true to the brand. That clash of perspectives gave the Special an edge. It wasn't just accepted, it was argued about, which in Harley culture is a sign of relevance. Context digest. In the touring motorcycle market, relevance is survival. Brands that fail to evolve risk being relegated to nostalgia pieces, admired but rarely ridden. The 2019 Road Glide Special managed to bridge that gap. It had one foot planted in Harley tradition, with a massive V-twin and the unmistakable rumble, and another foot stepping into modern expectations with comfort, tech, and subtle stylistic evolution. Micro story. On dealership floors, stories circulated of riders who walked in skeptical, but walked out with a Special. One Midwestern dealership manager recalled a customer in his 60s who came to trade in an old Ultra Classic. After testing the Road Glide Special, he admitted it felt like Harley had built the bike specifically for the way he wanted to ride now. Long trips, smoother handling, but without losing the sense of commanding presence. For Harley, every conversion like this was a victory in the fight to keep its core audience while drawing in new blood. Reflection bridge. Still, no motorcycle exists in a vacuum, and the true test of the Road Glide Special's legacy wasn't just whether riders bought it, but whether it influenced the broader conversation about what touring motorcycles could be. Context digest. Critics in motorcycle media often highlighted the balance of swagger and substance. They noted that while other touring bikes might outdo it on pure tech or lighter handling, few could match the combination of identity, stability, and road presence that the Harley delivered. For Harley-Davidson, the Special wasn't simply another model in the lineup. It was a statement to the market that the brand could adapt while holding on to its DNA. Micro story. In one long-haul test, journalists rode the Special alongside competitors across desert highways. While some bikes shined in efficiency or gadgetry, the Special was consistently praised for rider endurance and confidence. When the trip concluded, the consensus wasn't that the Harley was the flashiest or most advanced, but that it was the one riders felt they could live with for the longest journeys. That subtle but powerful distinction defined the way the model was remembered. As this wave of experiences and reviews accumulated, the stakes for Harley grew. The Road Glide Special wasn't just proving itself on the road, it was shaping perceptions of what Harley-Davidson could achieve in a rapidly changing market. And that perception carried consequences for the company's trajectory, leading us into the broader legacy and impact the Special would leave behind. By the time the 2019 Road Glide Special had established itself on roads, in dealerships, and in the press, it was no longer just a motorcycle, it was a cultural marker. Harley-Davidson had proven it could evolve without surrendering its essence, and that evolution rippled far beyond a single model year. Riders began to see the Special as a bridge between eras, the steadfast heavyweight tradition Harley had always represented, and the forward-looking necessity of adapting to a new generation of motorcyclists. This wasn't only about winning sales, it was about securing Harley's role in the touring landscape for the decade ahead. Micro story. One rider who had been loyal to Honda Goldwings for years switched to a Road Glide Special after a cross-country ride convinced him that comfort no longer required abandoning Harley identity. His story spread among forums and riding clubs, showing that Harley had managed to convert not only its faithful, but also those who had long stood outside its circle. That shift signaled impact not just on an individual level, but across communities that once considered Harley too stubborn to adapt. Context digest. Brand perception in the motorcycle world is built slowly and lost quickly. Harley's past reputation for being heavy, loud, and sometimes technologically behind had created real challenges. The Road Glide Special countered that narrative by showing that Harley could deliver advanced features without diluting its DNA. This mattered not just to riders, but to industry analysts watching whether Harley could stay competitive in a globalized market where European and Japanese brands were pressing hard. Micro story. At the Sturgis Rally the year after its release, rows of Road Glide specials were seen lined up together, creating an unofficial statement of their own. Riders who had never met before were swapping stories about the ease of long rides, the confidence of braking on mountain descents, and the sense of arriving somewhere with presence. The model had become more than a purchase. It had become a social connector, a symbol of belonging to a wave of riders who wanted both modernity and tradition. Reflection bridge. What began as a gamble with fairings, finishes, and tech features had become a cornerstone of Harley's identity in the new era. Microstory. In dealerships years later, salespeople found themselves referencing the 2019 Road Glide Special as a benchmark, comparing newer models back to its balance of comfort, power, and swagger. It wasn't simply another release, it had become a yardstick. When a bike becomes the standard by which others are measured, it marks a turning point not just for that machine, but for the entire lineup around it. Context digest. The cultural impact of this bike also intersected with changing demographics. As younger riders entered the touring segment, the Special's blacked-out style and tech-friendly cockpit matched their expectations, while older riders appreciated the stability and familiar rumble. By appealing across generations, the Road Glide Special ensured Harley's touring segment remained relevant during a time when motorcycle ownership overall was facing demographic pressure. Microstory. One vivid story came from a couple who rode two up from Florida to California on a 2019 Special. They recounted how the ride was smoother than any cross-country trip they'd taken before, the saddlebags held all they needed, and the bike never once left them feeling fatigued or hesitant. By the time they rolled into California, they weren't just celebrating the end of a journey, they were convinced Harley had built a touring machine for the ages. These kinds of personal epics amplified the legend of the bike, carried through rider networks, rallies, and word of mouth. Reflection bridge. The legacy of the 2019 Road Glide Special, then, is not locked in the specs of its brochure, but in the miles it inspired riders to take and the confidence it instilled along the way. Context digest. For Harley-Davidson as a company, the Special became proof that carefully blending tradition with innovation could yield more than just short-term sales. It could reframe the conversation about what the brand meant in a modern context. In the competitive touring market, that reframe was vital. It ensured Harley was not pigeonholed as an aging giant, but as a living, adaptive force still capable of surprising both its critics and its loyalists. Microstory. Today, when owners of the 2019 Road Glide Special look back, they often describe it less as a bike they bought and more as a bike that changed how they rode. That distinction is powerful because it signals impact beyond ownership. It signals transformation. For many, it was the machine that turned long-distance trips from grueling endurance runs into exhilarating journeys, changing how they viewed both the road and themselves as riders. The 2019 Harley-Davidson Road Glide Special closed its chapter not as a mere model year, but as a statement of intent, showing that Harley could stride confidently into a new era without losing the thunder of its past. And as the echoes of that intent carried into later designs and inspired countless rides, the legacy of the touring beast became undeniable. So now, automotive enthusiasts, we've traced the journey of the 2019 Harley-Davidson Road Glide Special from its bold arrival to the miles it conquered and the legacy it left behind. What we've uncovered is a story that goes far beyond a single machine. This motorcycle represented a turning point for Harley-Davidson, a moment when the company chose not to retreat into nostalgia, but to face the demands of modern riders head-on. With its shark-nose fairing, Milwaukee 8114 engine, and blacked-out aesthetic, it stood at the crossroads of heritage and innovation. It showed skeptics that Harley could adapt while proving to loyalists that the soul of the brand was still alive in every mile. The stakes were high. Harley's relevance in the touring market depended on it, and the Special delivered. From the highways of America to rallies and forums across the world, it became a benchmark, a yardstick by which riders and even Harley itself would measure future models. It proved that comfort could coexist with swagger, that endurance could pair with presence, and that the Harley-Davidson name could remain a beacon for those who chase the horizon. The lesson here is bigger than specs or features. It's about the courage to evolve without surrendering identity, the willingness to take risks when tradition weighs heavy, and the reward that comes when engineering choices align with the culture of the road. The Road Glide Special of 2019 was more than just a bike. It was proof that the American touring spirit is still alive, roaring, and ready for the long haul. Thanks for riding with us on Auto Archive. See you next time, automotive enthusiasts.